I'm Sheena, and this is Unusual Hobbies, a short podcast series where we talk to people about hobbies that are different and unique.
Today I'm joined by Michelle, and we're talking about the fantastic world of snow camping. Snow camping, right?
Yes, yeah. Winter camping, we call it.
Winter camping. I think snow camping sounds fancier, so we're going to just go with that. So, this is a new phenomenon for me. I live in the southern hemisphere, which means that we don't get snow, ice, and all sorts of cold things. Michelle lives in Canada, which means they get a lot of it.
You don't know what you're missing.
I have no idea what I'm missing, which is why you're here. You're going to inform me about all the fantasticness I'm missing. So how this podcast came about is Michelle sent me a photograph of herself snow camping. And there was literally like piles of snow on the firewood as the fire burned. And I was like, how is this even possible? It seems like this should not be physically possible, but there you have it. So I thought, okay, cool, let's talk to an expert about it. So Michelle, let's start with, why would you want to do this thing?
So I'm pretty much an outdoors person at the best of times. I'm also a very hot person. And so my wife and I do a lot of hiking and camping in the summer, which I find rather uncomfortable because I'm always hot. So I decided, hey, why not try this in the actual winter where the weather is much cooler and I don't get as sticky as I do in the summer. So that's what first kind of got us into it. Then we had so much fun, we decided we were going to keep trying it again. The best part about it, I find, is that not a lot of people are really interested in doing it. So if you like to be by yourself, and not engage in a lot of social activity, then it's a great way to go camping and not run into a whole bunch of crowds.
I can see the merits of this.
The best, I'll save this one for last, the absolute best part about it is the lack of bugs.
Right.
I'm apparently very tasty. I don't know, because I can walk into a room with 20 other people, and if there's a mosquito in that room, it's coming for me. So the winter is perfect because there's no bugs.
Are mosquitoes bad in Canada?
Mosquitoes are incredibly bad in Canada, especially in the spring. We also have black flies, which are smaller than mosquitoes, but leave much bigger bites. Neither one of them are very enjoyable.
Lovely. But I'm guessing you need special gear to be able to actually accomplish this camping thing in the snow.
Absolutely. Fortunately, we have a lot of that gear already because we do a lot of backpacking. Merino wool, anything in terms of clothing, is something that I highly recommend. Something that wicks away any of the moisture on your body. Good winter jacket. I like down because it keeps you nice and warm. 4-season tents.
Okay, let's just back up a second. So why do you want clothing that moves the moisture away from your body?
Because it'll freeze. So if you're sweating and the moisture is staying on your body, you're going to get cold. So anything that wicks that away from you is going to help keep you warm.
Okay, so you want a material that's not going to get wet per se, because you don't want the material to freeze, but it needs to kind of absorb the moisture in such a way that you can stay warm.
Correct. And I mean, it's like, I like to compare it to any good book has a lot of layers to it. So when you're camping, you also want a lot of layers to your clothing.
Okay. All right, so 4 Seasons tent, which I assume is a tent that can withstand the icy temperatures.
Yeah. It's a little more sturdy. It's shaped a little differently for the wind to go over it. Aerodynamics, I guess. But you don't want a lot of space in the tent, because if there's a lot of space in the tent, then it's harder to keep it warm.
Huh. So, okay, but there's snow on the ground, right? So do you just camp like on top of the snow, or do you dig a trench in the snow? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so when you get to your site, you figure out where you want to put your tent. And there's a couple different ways that you can go hiking, and you can either do it with skis or snowshoes. We choose snowshoes. And then you take your snowshoes and you pat down a flat area so that it's a little bit sturdier. And then there's a little bit of a wall made up around the outskirts of where your tent's going to be.
This is so complicated. Okay. And then you put your tent down, straight down. You don't have like a ground sheet or something.
Yeah, we have a ground sheet that we put down, but it's just a thin tarp.
Okay. And I assume your tent has to be waterproof considering that snow is water.
Yeah.
Okay. So what other gear and things do you use to make it more comfortable for you at those temperatures?
So you don't want to, once you set your tent up, you don't want to actually be sleeping on the snow either. So we have air mattresses, and they just blow up. So they roll up and fit really nicely into your backpack. And that keeps your body off the ground. We also have sleeping bags that are rated for minus 25. So every different kind of sleeping bag has a different temperature rating. So that keeps you warmer at night. There's a few other tricks for nighttime. You don't want to be sleeping in the clothes that you've been wearing all day, for one. So you want to have extra clothes to sleep in. We also like to fill up our Nalgene bottle with boiling water and slide that into the sleeping bag before you go in. Pro tip, though, make sure you screw the lid on really tight because you don't want it to leak into your sleeping bag.
Has that happened?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
We've had a couple interesting fails, let's put it that way.
Oh, tell us.
That's why actually when we started it, the very first time we only went car camping. So basically we went to a site that everybody would go to in the summer. So you can just drive up to it. And we just set up there and did pretty much the same thing you would do in the summer, but in the winter. That way the car was there, and if there were any issues, we could basically get out right away.
So start smaller rather than the big stuff. Now, you have, it sounds like you've got a lot more gear because you've got extra jackets and extra clothing and extra things to keep your sleeping bags warm and all this sort of stuff. Don't you find that it makes it heavier and then plus trekking through the snow is tedious? It doesn't sound like fun.
It's not tedious, it's beautiful. A lot of our gear, so we've actually got a sled, which we pile, because you're also going to want to take a lot of wood with you, because you definitely want to have a fire. So we have a nice big sled that we bring, and my wife has a wonderful harness that she wears, and she pulls the sled for us. And then when I get tired, I jump on the sled and, go for a ride, which lasts about 10 seconds because she then turns around and tells me to get off the sled.
So this is where snow dogs come in useful.
Yes, that was it. I mean, wives are useful that way too, I guess.
You're listening to the Lesbian Talk Show. TheLesbianTalkShow.com, your hub of podcast information.
Okay, now you actually take your dog with you.
Yes.
And you've got special gear for Moz.
Yes. Yeah, so we have booties for her so her paws don't get cold being in the snow a lot. She has really hairy feet, so the snow tends to collect on it. So we make her wear booties, which is a little awkward at first. She does the little goofy dance as she's prancing around with them on, but they get used to it pretty quick. And we also have a down jacket for her to wear when we get to the site, and we have a different jacket for her to wear while we're hiking. So the down jacket keeps her warm when we're not moving, and the other jacket keeps her warm while we're hiking.
You also have like a yoga mat type thing that she sleeps on the ground.
Yeah, and she has her own sleeping bag because we spoil her.
Oh, like a proper sleeping bag that she gets zipped up in.
Yep.
I love that. How do you keep the fire going in the snow?
So before you build the fire, you tend to dig yourself a nice little hole in the snow. You don't want to build it on top of the snow because it'll melt and start to sink in and everything. So I always bring fire starter with me, the little sticks of fire starter, because that makes it so much easier to start the fire. I don't have to be that much of an egotistical person that I try and do it from scratch. So the fire starter is a good idea to have with you. And just keep piling the wood on. And once you get it going, it's not hard to keep it going.
Okay. If somebody wants to start this hobby, what do you recommend that they do first?
Research. Definitely research. There's a ton of sites on the internet that will give you gear lists that you want, little tips on how to set up your tent, where to set it up, all that kind of stuff. So that's the best thing to do first. And then I would definitely recommend doing it in a car camping situation first. You don't want to go on a hike, end up 15 miles from the nearest civilization, and then have a problem. So,
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you think people need to know about this?
yes, go to the bathroom before you go to bed, because there is nothing worse than being in the dark, cold tent in the middle of the night and having to choose between lying there all night staring at the ceiling in incredible discomfort or getting out of your nice warm sleeping bag and going outside in the freezing cold. That's my number one pro tip. My number two pro tip is electronics do not fare well in the winter. So if you're bringing your e-reader with you, you might want to bring a charging source because the battery is not going to last very long. Or bring an old-fashioned regular book with you.
What are those things these days?
Yeah, I know, right? It's a little bit heavier, but and if you're going for a long time, you're probably only going to want to bring one, but the electronics definitely don't fare very well in the cold.
Is it just a matter of the actual cold? So like the battery drains fast or something?
Yep. I've run out of juice on a few times.
So do you have like a battery pack now or something that you take with?
Yeah, I've got a couple actually. We actually have an interesting stove setup that we bought, and I can't think of the name of it right now, but it's a wood-burning stove. It's very small. It's probably the size of a coffee cup, and you put sticks inside of it and ignite them, and it converts the heat into electricity. So it has a side on that you can plug in a charger, and you can connect your phone to it and charge your phone from the fire that you're burning.
That is crazy. And does that actually work?
It does, yeah. We tested it out. I wish I could remember the name of it because I know that they're using it in a lot of places in Africa, actually, larger versions of it, so that people can actually charge their devices while they're cooking their dinner and stuff with using that stove. It's pretty neat.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I like gadgets, so that appeals.
I have tons of gadgets. One of the things that you can use to keep warm are hot shots, those little packets that you put in your gloves and stuff. But because I don't like using them because of the waste that they generate, I actually have, it's a Zippo, and it's a metal container that you put the lighter fluid into. And then when you ignite it, you put a lid over it, and the flame still burns, but it burns very small. And then it's like a little hand warmer. It's a pretty neat gadget. I like that one.
That's amazing. See, that makes a lot more sense to me than the stuff that you end up throwing away and it just becomes like waste after one use.
Yeah. I mean, one of the main tenets of backcountry traveling is leave no trace. So you don't want to be leaving a lot of stuff lying around, garbage and that kind of stuff. And then I don't like, even as a general rule at home, to throw out anything if I don't have to.
Michelle, thank you so much for joining me today. I think your hobby is completely fascinating, especially for those of us in the Southern Hemisphere who don't really experience snow much.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm pretty sure
you get some beautiful pictures too. If you're into photography, there's nothing quite like seeing the sun shining over like a bunch of ice and snow. It's definitely worth the visual.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. Michelle, how can people get hold of you if they decide that you are just the coolest person on earth?
My Twitter handle is @SooliesKiller, which is SooliesKiller. And Facebook, it's just Michelle Lynn Blakey.
You've been listening to Unusual Hobbies. Check out the links in the show notes for more information about my guest and to find our link to Patreon, where you can get exclusive podcasts and help us grow. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please rate us, especially if you listen on Apple Podcasts. That's all for this episode. Have a hobbylicious day.